City Center Radio. This is episode 334, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2025. Welcome back to the show. I hope you had an amazing weekend. Yes, it is Monday, and believe it or not, some places still might be closed today or have a delayed opening or have some other effects because, yes, as you are probably well aware, there is still ice on the ground a lot. The majority of it is gone at this point, at least in the areas around me. I haven't exactly been traveling near and far, mostly just near. But it does seem like, based on other things I've read and other people's posts on social media and whatnot, that we're pretty much out of it. But yeah, there are certain areas of the city and surrounding area, for that matter, that still have a little bit of ice. So number one, be careful if you're traveling. You know, some back roads still could be a little slippery. And of course, check with businesses that may be closed before you go out to run errands or whatever, because some will, like I said, remain closed or maybe have like a delayed opening. So be sure to check on those. Hope you stayed warm and safe all weekend. And hopefully this, it's not a big deal. This rarely happens that we have a storm like this. And it wasn't even a major storm by any stretch. But when you don't have the infrastructure to handle this stuff, that's why we have a mini little snowstorm that is like dragged into multiple days of, the city essentially being shut down. Don't get me wrong. I know businesses, as each day passed, opened more and more. And people were going out and about this weekend, but it was nowhere near what it would have been if there was no snow or ice on the ground. So, it gives me a little chuckle having grown up somewhere where there's like a ton of snow, and what we just had here would have been maybe like a delayed opening for schools on the first day, but then would have had like no issues really. But again, I just, it makes sense. Why would we have plows and, tons and tons of salt for the roads or anything when this rarely happens? But it does give me a little chuckle just seeing how drastically different the responses are and what happens in a storm like that. But in any event, like I said, I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you have a good week ahead. Last episode, I talked a lot about some of the things going on with the new Trump administration. There's so much more, like I said, for you to look into if you're interested. Not great, not a lot of great things going on. Some other stories that I didn't mention, but you can go look if you want more details. There's been a stop on medical research projects in general, but that includes a stop on cancer research projects. Not sure who voted for that. I don't think anyone would have. So why are these things being stopped? There's been some people in different positions that have been let go. There's been a lot of talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, being removed from every part of government. And so, of course, a lot of people are celebrating, saying everything's based on merit now, which, of course, doesn't take into account what DEI actually is. It's not what those people think it is. But they're celebrating that. And so how do we celebrate? Well, a man who has been a host on Fox News on the weekends is now in charge of the Department of Defense. I'm not sure what his merit-based appointment was for that position. He certainly didn't seem like he was qualified. But, DEI doesn't apply to the Fox News host that Donald Trump likes, I guess. So, there's that. And there's just more and more and more. But those are ones that I that either have come up since I recorded or that I neglected to mention because there's just so many things going on. But so just a couple other things to kind of keep your eye on and see what's going on. But I'm not going to get into any further from there. We're just going to have some local news. And we'll deal with these other things as they come up. And you know how his first term, it seemed like every day there was something to be upset about and, get all worked up about. And this time I'm going to try not to let that happen and try to focus on things that are actually going to get done, not just like a dumb thing he says on a whim that isn't going to actually be followed through on, or you know what I mean. Let's focus on actual issues, not just like, can you believe what he said? Because yeah, everyone believes it, and most people don't care anymore. We don't need to be talking about these little, slips, misspeaking or whatever. Focus on things that are actually being pushed to actually happen. So anyway, let's get into the local news. The Yemassee escaped monkey saga is over. Well, at least this portion of it. I'm sure there will continue to be questions about the facility and some of their practices going forward. But what I mean is, the last few remaining monkeys that had escaped from that research facility back in November. It's been a few months. If I can't believe it's been that long since they escaped. But those last few monkeys have been recaptured. So you may remember there is the Alpha Genesis facility in Yemassee, South Carolina. Back on November 27th, 43 total monkeys escaped the facility after an employee failed to secure an enclosure that they were in. They got out of the building, but they primarily stayed in a wooded area that was near the facility. And slowly but surely, they were recaptured and brought back in. They chose to try to like set little traps for them instead of doing something, like people in the community, like, why don't you just shoot them with like a tranquilizer dart and go collect them? Thankfully, they decided not to do that and just wanted to, let them have their fun and, try to get them in a more humane way. Now, what happens to them in that facility after they are recaptured, it may not be humane. So I'm not giving this facility too much credit. But in any event, yes, there was about 4 that had still been on the loose. I'm sorry, I had mentioned November 27th as the day that they escaped. That was actually where there was just 4 remaining. The escape actually had happened earlier in the month. So since November 27th, there's been about 4 that were still on the loose of those 43. And then now, as of Friday, according to the CEO, they have been recaptured. Good news is that they all appeared to be in good health, which, considering they've been outside on their own, granted, I know the people at the facility was like leaving food out for them and stuff, but considering like the cold that we just had in the storm, I'm glad that they all survived. And yes, as of Friday, they were all back in the research facility. So again, yay, they're okay, but now they're back in this facility, which may not be great. So it's one of those weird. I'm glad they survived the cold and being out in the wilderness, which they didn't grow up in. Oh, but now they're back in this facility, and we don't really know what they do to these monkeys. So it's just like a lot of things. There's some good news and some bad news with that good news. So, in any event, the saga ends for now. We'll see if there's any repercussions for those monkeys getting out. I doubt it, considering thankfully they are all fine, and they didn't really leave the facility or cause damage or any havoc in the community. But there's been some other questions about that facility, so they may come back up in the news. And when that happens, of course, I'll be sure to let you know. And some more bummer news. I'm sorry. These are the 2 stories. At least they both have a tiny bit of happiness, which is I'm about to talk about the Righteous Gemstones. Season 4 is coming up. That's exciting. The bad news is it's going to be the last season of the show. Yes, the Righteous Gemstones, which is filmed here in the Charleston area, is ending its run on HBO. This 4th season will be its last. It's already been, they've already wrapped the season. They did it at the end of last year, I think October or November. So, we're just waiting for the new season to come out. But Danny McBride, who created the show, stars in it, produces, he did say in an interview with GQ that this will be the last season. Now, we don't know a premiere date, so we're still waiting on that. But it is, obviously fans of the show are eagerly awaiting this new season. And apparently the final episodes will be available in March on the Max streaming service. But that doesn't mean that's when they're going to, debut on live television versus everything being available on streaming. So when we actually have a premiere date, I'll be sure to pass that along in some capacity, whether on this show or social media channels, website, etc. Now the show is, like I mentioned, created by Danny McBride. It comes from his production company Rough House Pictures, which is based here in Charleston. He moved here with the company from the LA area several years ago and has created some shows and movies. He did a remake of Halloween in the area. Vice Principals was a show, the first one he did here in the Charleston area, and then followed that up with Righteous Gemstones. So, yeah, certainly a bummer when a show you like is ending. It's always better that they end on their own terms versus, like the studio canceling it or what have you. So that leads me to believe that they're happy with the season, and it gives it a nice wrap up to the Gemstone story. So that's always good. But it is a bummer that, not only just this, if you're like me and like the show, that it's ending. It's a bummer that, it was filmed here. So it was fun when you're watching it, in addition to just being entertained, seeing things you recognize from around town, or maybe there's a friend or someone who worked as a background actor, and you get to see them on the show. That's always a lot of fun. And also just seeing all the stars of the show, whether physically seeing them out and about in Charleston, when they're staying here during filming, or seeing their stories on social media and saying, oh, wow, they ate it, chubby fish tonight, which seems to be something Adam Devine, one of the stars, would like to do. So that was always fun, seeing them enjoying the city and the surrounding areas, and then hearing them, when they're on podcasts or late night shows or whatever, hearing them mention Charleston and things that happen here. So that's a bummer too, and I'm sure Danny McBride will create some new sort of production, whether a movie or TV show, that'll likely film in this area, since, like I said, he moved here kind of for that purpose. And there'll be new people here in town. But it is a bummer that some of the stars that you maybe liked on the show, or like outside the show as well, you won't be seeing them in the Charleston area, like we've gotten used to over the last handful of years. So for instance, if you haven't seen the show, in addition to Danny McBride and Adam Devine, who I just mentioned, legendary actor John Goodman is also part of the series, and then as well as Edie Patterson, Cassidy Freeman, Tim Balls, Tony Cavallo. There's so many others that have been involved in the show. Some regulars, some just that appeared as one-offs during the season. Like Macaulay Culkin was in a couple episodes. I think not last season, but the season before. So that was kind of cool to see him here in the area, and then of course see him in the production itself. And this year they're going to have some more guest stars. Megan Mullally, who you may know from Will and Grace, a ton of other stuff, but that's what she's probably best known for. She's one of the featured guests this year, as well as Sean William Scott, who you may remember from films like the American Pie series. So excited to see how the new season turned out. Sad to see it go, but interested to see how they wrap up this whole story that they've been telling. And, just curious what the next move's going to be for McBride and Rough House. Like I said, I hope and kind of assume that they're going to continue doing productions in this area. Like I said, since they set up the base here, but we'll certainly see. First things first, got to get this new season premiered and out there. And I'll be sure to pass that information along so you can check it out. And while you're watching it, maybe enjoy seeing some Charleston things in the background as well. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And also a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I hope you have a good week. If you want to keep up to date on what's open, what's closed, what activities are going on in town, what events, concerts, shows, theater productions, whatever it may be, go to holycitycenter.com, of course, for the latest, and holycitycenter.com/calendar for the latest events. I'll be back with you later this week. Wednesday is the next show. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff so you don't miss any shows. I'm already looking forward to being back on the microphone. But until then, good night and good luck.